All right, Trevor, welcome. Thank you for joining. Excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And everyone, this is Trevor Hoppers in Tulsa, Oklahoma at Weightwise. And Trevor, if you would, give us a little snapshot of the history of Weightwise.
Yeah, so we have been around in our current form for a little over 11 years. We were part of a larger company called Foundation Healthcare Affiliates. So the actual genesis of Weightwise stretches back to about 2006. The surgeons bought the practice, so we've kind of been our own individual practice since 2009. I'm the administrator. I've been the administrator since we broke off. We have about 20 employees. We have 2 surgeons, 3 nurse practitioners. We also employ exercise and diet staff. Our psychologist is here in-house, and we really kind of our position in the market is we put ourselves up as a one-stop shop. They can see the surgeons here, diet, exercise. They can get their psych visits done here, obviously. We offer a full range of supplements and vitamins. We have a gym on site. So pretty much anything that needs to happen for the surgery happens here. And even the surgery itself happens directly below our practice. We're on the 2nd floor of a hospital. So We've got a pretty slick little setup here.
You do. Indeed. And if you don't mind me asking, in the last couple of years, roughly how many procedures a year are you guys looking at?
So we do about 500 procedures a year. We were a little over that a couple years ago. Last year, we were a little under that. This year, we project to be right around that. So we do a third of the surgeries that are done in this area. Right. Which obviously fluctuates from year to year, but around 500 is what we usually tell people.
Okay. And the title of this episode is we're focusing on what's important to track in a bariatric clinic. And the last time I was out there visiting you guys, you showed me all the data that you keep tabs on a monthly basis. And I think that was probably more bariatric data than I've ever seen in my life. So I guess two things. First question, tell me a little bit about everything you track. And then I want to focus in on what's most important to track.
So it kind of started out of when I was a kid collecting baseball cards, and I love to read the numbers on the back and kind of track how players were doing. So that's kind of where my obsessive data tracking comes from. But yeah, we also have a practice management system it's very customizable. So it's very conducive to pulling out any type of data you want to pull out, which is great. So to answer your question, how I kind of look at it is I have a few high-level measures, and then I have a ton of tier 2 and tier 3 kind of measures that I can drill down to if the top level measures are not trending in the direction we want to look at. So we really have kind of 6 core measures that we look at very routinely on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Okay.
And part of that is because we have a few different companies here kind of mixed into one. But just to kind of sum that up, revenue is kind of our top level number 1 measure that we're looking at. I'm sure a lot of other administrators are going to agree with me here, but you got revenue coming in, that covers up a lot of your other problems.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of number 1. Our second level that we really look at is clinic activity. And we look retrospectively at that, but we kind of use it as a predictive number, if that makes sense. So we track by provider. all the number of visits that come in, the different types of visits, all that. But we really don't care what the numbers are that have happened. We really just kind of use that as a data set to predict what's going to happen going forward.
Sure. And you're specifically talking about new bariatric consults booked, consults completed. What are you looking at there?
I'm talking about the whole spectrum. We obviously do look quite a bit at new bariatric consults completed. But then we also look at what sort of activities in the pipeline. How many supervised weight loss did we do? How many pre-ops did we do? How many post-ops did we do? Because we're fairly intensively focused on the pre-op program. I think more than a lot of other practices are. Maybe I'm wrong there. But we really look at that as a measure of how we engaged our patients. Are they coming back? Are they attending their diet, exercise, and seeing the nurse practitioner?
Right.
So that's kind of the key we look at.
Okay. All right. So we got revenue, we got clinic activity, and what's number 3?
And then really the third one is the conversion rate.
Yeah.
And what I mean by conversion rate is a patient comes in for a new patient consult, and then they end up having a bariatric surgery.
Yep.
And then so what is that pull-through rate? And obviously there's a dozen points along the line that we measure. But we're talking about just what are our 3 top lines. Those are our 3 main top lines.
Yep. Yeah. And I saw Dr. Walton has this, he had, I'm sure you have your own, but he had a spreadsheet going back a decade showing the conversion rate month to month, year to year.
Yes.
And what's crazy and pretty interesting is most bariatric clinics, if you ask them what their conversion rate is, they don't know. They'll take a wild guess, and then of course it depends on, do you accept Medicare, Medicaid, how's your insurance in that state? So, and
there's not, the frustrating thing is there's not a ton of benchmarks out there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So as we talked before, a couple of years ago, we were running around a 50% conversion rate. At this point, we're running a 30 to 33 to 35% conversion rate. We don't know if that's good. I mean, in our heads, we're thinking like, oh, well, that's down from where it was a couple of years ago. Like, that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no idea, what they're running in Amarillo, what they're running in Arkansas, or what they're running wherever.
Right.
I mean, it may just be that the industry has shifted to where a 35% conversion rate is good at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it varies widely depending on all the other factors. And I think if most clinics would track it, they would see how it varies widely from physician to physician, right?
Yes.
Who really ever teaches anyone how to do a great consult?
Well, I mean, you're right. You're exactly right.
Okay. Those were 3 good ones. Do you want to mention the other top things that you track?
Well, so we have, which I believe you're going to talk to one of our dietitians later on, but we have a store that's a pretty good chunk of our revenue. So that is definitely something we track. I will let her talk about the detailed measures there.
Yeah, and with 20 full-time employees, that store sales helps cover some overhead, huh?
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So I really like to look at, I did really like to look at over-the-counter clinic collections as a measure of clinic activity. And just as a side note here, anytime I'm tracking data, I do, oops, lost you there for a second. I do a 13-month graph instead of a 12-month graph. So I can compare that full month from last year to the full month this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would pass that tip along to anyone who's trying to get a better look at their data.
Sure.
I also like to look at clinic costs minus what we spend on store stuff. So payroll and G&A minus whatever we spend on store product. Because essentially we want to spend, if we spent $200,000 a month on store product, I'd be thrilled out of my mind because I know we'd be churning that amount of product on the back end. So I like to take that out and look at our costs like that.
Right. Okay. Those are great, man.
Yeah.
And you have all the numbers you keep tabs on. How often are you looking at those? How often do you sit down with the physicians and look at those?
So I have a giant spreadsheet. It is a 20-page long spreadsheet that is full of formulas that overlap and columns that push one way and they light up different colors if there's an issue or if something's in range or whole 9 yards.
Yep.
And I will go through once a month and completely update that spreadsheet.
Okay.
So I got that going back all the way to 2011. So we can look at, that's kind of my database of everything we've done. I mean, it's not since the clinic opened, but since we kind of got ourselves together enough to, track ourselves and keep tabs on everything.
Sure. Okay.
And then during pandemic time, I mean, basically, so we used to have a sit-down meeting once a month and kind of go over this thing, hash it out, argue about it. Oh, we should be doing this. We should be doing that. And then since pandemic, it's basically shoot this out and have email discussions.
Right.
Which, I mean, is not nearly as good as being able to sit down face-to-face and
have a good old-fashioned
hash out some of this stuff.
Yeah, good old-fashioned argument, right?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything that has become important as a measure that wasn't in the past, or are these the standard things that you've always been taught?
That's a good question. I like to try to keep it as standard as possible. So there hasn't been any huge changes. But one thing that has kind of over the last couple of years gained a little more importance and discussion is our clinic's AR, which a lot of clinics are going to think like, oh, you guys are crazy. Like that, you should have been discussing that long ago. But we have only fairly recently shifted from a very high percentage of cash pay to more contracted payers paying after the surgery.
Right.
So, I mean, it used to be that we'd run, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 in AR. So it was never a topic.
Right.
Now, and especially since the pandemic, when we've noticed a much more significant delay in getting paid, we'll run 40, 50, 60 days in AR. And, I mean, it raises a little bit of a red flag, but it's, we're not scheduling emergency meetings because the AR is 65 days.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Because you guys are in a unique position, and I think probably one of the highest in the country. Share a little bit about what your cash pay percentage has been in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will tell you precisely what it's been in the past. So we ran about 75% for a good 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Yeah. Starting, I mean, there was just not much coverage in Oklahoma for bariatric surgery.
Yep.
Starting in 2017 is where that kind of started to trend down. And in 2017, we ran right at about 60% cash pay.
Yep.
And then in 18, 19, 20, we shifted to really going after patients or going after employers or third-party payers and contracting for one bundled rate for everything.
Yep.
And then that really drove down our cash pay percentage to the point where in 2018 we did 46. 2019 we did exactly 50-50. And this year we're running about 45% cash pay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, ma'am. Those are good. If you've been at this for a bit, and
yes,
I know everybody has problems that come and go and challenges. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and solve one problem in the clinic for forever, what would that problem be?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think, and this is going to be a little bit abstract, but kind of the coalescing of everyone around one common goal or outcome. And what I mean by that is surgeons want a high number of surgeries, but they also want high, so we could fix that by bringing in, a bunch of Medicare surgeries or, kind of lower paying surgeries than what we normally do. Mm-hmm. They want to keep that case or dollars per case high also. Mm-hmm. So, but in the business office manager, their goal is to kind of keep the AR as low as possible, collect everything so it looks like they're doing their job. So it's like there's a lot of conflicting goals might not be the right word, but there's a lot of conflicting motivations, mm-hmm, sure, which makes it hard a lot of times to make decisions. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of that's probably not the cut and dry answer that you want to hear.
No, not at all.
That's a major problem that comes up a lot of times, and that's what I'd like to wave the magic wand and have it go away.
Yeah, I like that answer, and I have observed a lot of that myself, especially larger organizations like you guys, 20 plus people in that building. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different priorities from I'm so busy, I don't want more patients, to we own this place, we want more patients, to hey, we want to get these people out of here fast, to we need to spend more time with these people. So I think it's an interesting
all things you just mentioned, or you explained it much better than I did, but that tension that we've had those discussions many times.
Yep. Yeah, it would be nice. Maybe one day we'll have enough people interested in sharing data that we can get some benchmarks of, how many employees does it take to do 500 surgeries a year?
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see.
Okay, and last question. Knowing what you know now that you've been in bariatrics and this world, what would you say to your younger self? What piece of advice would you give for how your career goes, what you focus on? What is the advice that today's Trevor gives the Trevor in year one?
Oh man, you've got to learn to be more flexible. No doubt about it. Like I when I very first started, I can have had an idea of how I wanted the clinic to work. Yeah. And so all my decisions and all my, ideas were focused on, okay, I've got this idea in my head, like this is where I want to go. Yeah. But that's like, you really can't. It's like, there's too many outside forces. There's too many changes that are coming your way. Like you don't know what the next year or the next 2 years, the next month is going to be. So you really have to just work on being as flexible as you possibly can. You need to design your practice to be nimble and to be able to kind of change what you're doing. Keep going back to the pandemic as an example, but we completely shifted our business model in 2 days on March 23rd and March 24th.
Right.
And if we hadn't, if we hadn't been working on being flexible and having, having our employees used to change and able to use technology and, willing to go with the flow a little bit, like that never would have happened.
Totally. Yeah. Cause
and
I know some clinics did not do this, but you guys very quickly, everyone worked from home for how long?
they're still working at home. We still have, other than up here on a daily basis, I'm up here a couple days a week. We have one dietitian up here, and we have one nurse practitioner and one MA up here. So we got around 4 people here every day.
Yep.
Everybody else is working at home still.
Wow. So 100% new patient consults are virtual?
100% virtual. Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's a great answer. Man, there's some other subjects I want to dive into, but I want to keep these short and sweet, at least in the beginning.
No problem.
So, man, Trevor,
have me on again. I'm happy to talk.
I can't thank you enough for your time. I really appreciate your input. I'm going to stop the recording and then we can wrap up. Hang on one second.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.